Hi everyone, I'm Lauren, and I'm tired. This is the second time I've had to record this because I'm really dumb. This is my February wrap-up. Yeah, let's just get on into it. Instead of just reading out all the stats, I'll put all the different stats on the screen, but basically it was kind of a not too bad month. Didn't have any 1 or 2 stars, so I mean, it was good in that sense. There's quite a few 3 stars, but there were some 4 and 5s, and that's really great. I didn't read that much diversity, really. I think I read 14 books in February, if I counted right. A lot of manga, a lot of shorter stuff, so it's not really that impressive this time. I don't know, I didn't really have a plan for February, so I didn't really read a whole lot of interesting stuff. That's basically how it usually is for me. If I don't make a plan, I just read willy-nilly. And that's kind of what happened in February. I mostly read fantasy as well. I think I just read 2, not fantasy. I think they were both sci-fi. Although, both cases the science fictionness is pretty, I don't know, low sci-fi. They're not like in space or anything, and not super advanced technologies. So it's a little bit debatable on whether they're sci-fi or not. But whatever. I read what I read, so let's get on into it. So let's start with my 3-star reads. The first 3 that I have to talk about, I actually talked about in my recent unhaul video, and that is Juwana and the Dragon Newts 7 Kingdoms Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3, all by Kiyohisa Tanaka. So this is a really short manga series where only these lizard-type characters exist. There used to be humans, but they died off or whatever a long time ago. But the main character stumbles upon a human that hatches out of an egg, and he has to figure out what to do with her and where she needs to go and how she came around to be, and you know, that kind of thing. It's mostly an adventure-y type series. It's not incredibly complex, and I mean, it's only 3 volumes long, so I mean, it's not going to be that crazy complex for only 3 volumes, or it'd be really hard to. It's really well drawn, and I do kind of like the characters, at least at first, but overall it's just kind of in this weird okay-ish spot for me. They do a lot of meandering that doesn't really lead to much of anywhere. And there are a few points that kind of seem plot-holey and don't really make much sense. Like in one part, it's not really a spoiler, even though it's later. At one point, the main character has his bike stolen, and understandably, he's looking around for it for a while, but he has some other things that he needs to deal with, and he kind of forgets about the bike, because he has more important things to worry about. However, later in the story, there's a point in which he goes, "Oh, I need my bike now. I forgot all about my bike. Let me go get my bike." He doesn't know who stole his bike at that point, yet he somehow just goes off screen and gets his bike. He just suddenly now has his bike. I don't know if I misunderstood something, but it didn't seem like I did. It sounded like he just got his bike, and I don't know how. So, I mean, that's a pretty minor thing, really, but it did bother me a lot. There were some character growth type things that were an issue for the main character, and then they kind of fizzle out and like, don't really get resolved, yet they kind of acts like they got resolved in an interesting way too. I won't go into spoiler for that either. And then the other big thing for me is that the ending just kind of fizzles out and kind of ends, and I don't think the conclusion was all that interesting. So, there wasn't really that much that I was enthused about, yet there were some things that I had problems with. And that's why I gave each of the volumes a 3-star. And that's why I am unhauling them, so yeah. My next 3-star read is easily my shortest read of the whole year, probably, so far anyway, and that is Cat Wings by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is a children's story, I guess, like a picture book almost. And it's just about these cats that have wings and they fly around and get into mischief and adventure and explore and that kind of thing. It's not that complicated. It's very simple. It's a children's book. I think it's about 51 pages with illustrations, so it's pretty simple. I just randomly picked this up from the library just because it was available. I thought it was fine. In this one, I also liked the illustrations, but something about Ursula K. Le Guin's writing style just doesn't really rub well with me. I don't know why. It's kind of frustrating because I'm like, I don't like this, but maybe as well it's a bit too simple for me, but I'm not really sure. It's like kind of cute, but since there's not really much to go on in here, like obviously it's not gonna have deep characters and it's not gonna have a really deep plot, but yeah, like it was fine. I didn't actively dislike it and I didn't actively super like it either. Beforehand I had tried I think Wizards of Earthsea is the famous one by Le Guin, and the problem I had with it, and the reason why I couldn't get very far was also her writing style, so I was kind of curious if Catwings would be a little bit different and easier to follow. I mean, it was easier to follow and it was easier to read because, I mean, kids' book versus, I don't know what genre, I don't know what demographic Earthsea is, but it's obviously older than just kids' book. But yeah, I just don't know. Something about Le Guin's writing style really doesn't mesh. And I can't really point out why. It is worth checking out, probably, just because it's really, really short. You could probably read the whole series in one sitting, but I don't think it really worked out well for me. Alright, so those are the 3-star reads, so now for the 4 stars. Let's start with another one that's a little bit hard to talk about, because it's just difficult to explain. I don't know. So for the first 4-star reads I'm going to talk about, I read Frost Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3, Volume 4, Volume 5. And these are all by Kore Yamazaki. This is another short manga series. This one is about Faust, and she's trying to look for body parts to this demon. You don't really know why until later, but she's a mysterious type character, and she's really smart, and there are other characters that tag along and help her, and a bunch of other characters in, like, the church, I think, that actively try to stop her, so there's a lot of action and running away, and there's a lot of more background, not quite political, but almost political type stuff. Yeah, like, the plot is really hard to talk about because I think this is more of a character type focused thing. There's a few problems here and there that are just the local problems that they kind of stumble across. And it goes over a lot of different things, so it's just really hard to mush together into something. I did like it quite a bit. It's really interesting and it's pretty fast paced, which is good for 5 volumes. I should hope it's a little bit faster pace, because that's not really a lot of time to devote to a full manga story. I really like the characters. They have a lot of depth to them, especially Faust, as you slowly learn about her life and such, and her interaction with demons. I think this is a somewhat retelling or take on Faust, which I don't know if I would call it a classic book, but it is a very old book that has stuck around quite a bit. I don't know what that's about, though, so I can't really even remotely tell you how this is different or the same from that. But I did enjoy the full series, so I gave all of the volumes 4 stars. So that's all the manga that I read in February. Now for some books that I borrowed from the library. So the first one I want to talk about of those is Tuck Everlasting by Natalie Babbitt. I think this is like a classic children's book. I remember reading it a long time ago, and I decided to pick it up because it was free in the library. And it's been a long time since I've read it, so I wanted to see how it was. Basically, it's a very short children's book. It's about this girl who comes across the Tuck family, who come across a spring that gives them eternal life. And it talks a lot about what it means to live forever, and if that's a good thing or a bad thing. And there are some other parties involved that obviously want this spring. It's a really short story. It's only around 140 pages, big font too, because kids' book. But I really liked it. I thought it had a lot of depth for the small number of pages it had, and I liked that it took the amount of time it needed and it did not take longer. Something that I have a problem with in just media in general, whether that's video games, movies, books, whatever, is that sometimes what happens is whoever made it will put extra stuff to make it a longer experience, to have more features or to have more just stuff happening. And oftentimes that just takes away from the experience and then makes it not work so well. So that's why I like how Tuck Everlasting does not do that. It knows what it's about, it tells what it needs to tell, and then it wraps up. And I think it wraps up pretty nicely. It asks some deep questions in an interesting way, and I really enjoyed it. I'm actually pretty surprised about that, because sometimes kids' books read like way too young for me, and I just get really bored. But this was pretty interesting, and so I liked it. I probably want to get a copy of this myself, actually. Another book that I borrowed from the library, and one that counts for my reading goals, is The City of Ember by Jean Duprau. This is like a light sci-fi book. I think this is a middle grade, but it could be a YA. It's in that weird distinction, and it's kind of old, so I think it was before middle grade was really used, so I don't know. In this book, it takes place in the City of Ember, as you might expect, and it's generally really dark, only lit by light bulbs, and the city is running out of food, it's running out of just any sort of provision that you can need, like clothes and light bulbs as well, which is the worst thing for them to run out of. As well, the city's electricity just keeps on flickering in and out, and it's overall pretty distressing. The city tries to continue living on as normal, but the two kids who are the main characters, they try to figure out if there's a way out of their city to either, more provisions or just another city in general, so that they can get more help or move out of this dying city, or anything really to fix their situation. This one was a reread for me, and I remember really liking it, and I still really like it. I don't know if I like it more or less than I did on my initial read. It's a bit slow to start with. It focuses a lot on telling you the way that this society works for like a good portion of it before they get into finding a way out of the City of Ember. But I did think it was interesting, so I didn't really mind that much. And one thing that I really liked was that the kid characters were not really annoying, and that's a really big thing for me. One of the big things that bother me with kid main characters is that they're annoying or incredibly stupid or whatever. Like, kids can often be stupid, but a lot of books that I've tried to read or read, they inch too far over that line for me, and I'm just like, I hate you. So frustrating. However, the two main characters here, they do make mistakes that, if you thought about it a little bit, I guess could be considered stupid mistakes. But the mistakes that they make, I feel like are reasonable enough that I'm just like, okay, whatever. That was dumb, but that wasn't super dumb. Or I can see that being a reasonable enough decision to come to. So yeah, overall it was a pretty breezy book to read again. This one is another short one. I really liked it. Interesting read, and I want to finish the series as part of my 2020 goals. The last 4-star read that I have is Bakemonogatari Monster Tale Part 3 by Nissi Oisin. This is the third book in the Monogatari series, and holy jeez, this series is just really hard to explain. The first 3 volumes in the Monogatari series, which includes this one, the main character goes around to various people in his town and he solves their problems with aberrations or monsters or spirits or whatever you want to call them. Oftentimes these spirits come to haunt people for another reason, something they've done or a traumatic experience that they can't get over and that kind of thing. So oftentimes he is also trying to solve their own personal issues. It's a hard series to talk about much because it is very heavily character driven. Not really a whole lot happens in each volume as a whole if you just looked at the plot. There are many pages that are just dedicated to the main character talking back and forth with other characters, usually with comedic quips and word puns and like inside joke type things, almost obscure references, and it just kind of goes really crazy, silly, and ridiculous, but also it covers some really deeper topics. So it's this weird back and forth between serious and really clever and silly. So it's really strange, but I really like it. This volume as well. For this one, I don't think this is my favorite volume of the 3, maybe. It did start off with kind of a side tangent thing before getting to the main issue of the plot, but I still enjoyed this overall. It's a little bit hard to judge, a little bit, because the first 3 volumes were published in Japan just with 2 volumes, and for some reason we needed to get them as 3 volumes because it would have been slightly too long or something. I don't know. But I think maybe that might be why it starts off a little weird. It might not have cut off at this point if we got the volumes in 2 instead of 3. So I'm not really judging too much for that. It might have flowed a bit better if it was 2 volumes instead of 3, but you know, I have what I have. This is definitely not an easy series to recommend, but I did enjoy it. It worked well for me, so I am still planning on continuing on with the series, and I forgot to say this is part of my 2020 goals. Okay, so down to my 2 final books, and these are my 5-star reads. The first of these is also another library book, and that is The Giver by Louis Lowry. This is the first book in the Giver Quartet, and is also part of my 2020 goals. This is the other lighter sci-fi-ish series, and it's about this society where everything's kind of perfect and heavily mandated in a way, where everything goes as planned and everything has to be super precise, and it's done in a way where the people don't know that there's more out there, so they're not unhappy that they don't get choice because they don't know that that's a thing, really. Each citizen in this town is given a job, and the main character is old enough to get his job finally, and he is given the job of the receiver, who takes these memories and experiences from the giver and he collects them into himself. And these are experiences that the society doesn't know about. So he gets to experience the stuff that happened before the society kind of existed, or outside of the society, or whatever. It's not really known. So this was another reread for me. I read it in school, and I remember it being one of the only ones that we read that I actually liked. And I still really liked it, actually. I liked it a bit more, I think, than I did in my first read. Part of that is because maybe I understand the concepts a little bit better, maybe, but also because on my first read, I was really frustrated with this ending. I still kind of am, but less so now because when I first read it, I didn't know it was in a series, so I didn't know that there would be a continuation of things, and it just didn't wrap up well enough for me, so it was just really frustrating. But now that I know it's in a series, and I know these characters will come up again, it's like, yeah, we'll learn more about that later. That's fine by me. So yeah, this is another one where it's kind of shorter, and it explores these deeper topics really well, and it was enjoyable to read about the society. And yeah, just surprisingly deep for how short it is, I think. Just a little over 200 pages, and it goes into a lot of stuff. And it doesn't do it in a way that's forcing it down your throat either. You just kind of have to think about it. I'm looking forward to reading the other books in this series. I still don't know how those other books will go, but we'll get there when I get there, I suppose. The last book I read, and easily my favorite book of February, that is The Disappearance of Winter's Daughter by Michael J. Sullivan. This is the fourth book in the Reria Chronicles series, and as of right now, this is the last book in the series. Most of the books in this series are pretty standalone, self-contained adventures with Royce and Hadrian, who are two badass type fighting dudes. Hadrian's more of a fighter, and Royce is a assassin-y type roguey character. And I love this series so much, and this is no exception to that. They're on a task to rescue someone who they believe could be kidnapped, and they just go to this town, and there's all this like hidden stuff that they uncover, and they do a lot of cool fights, and there's all this background stuff that you dig up. Royce and Hadrian bounce off each other really well, especially well in this one, I think. I love Royce and Hadrian as characters, and there's a lot of other really good characters in here. Not just because of humor, but just interesting wise. And yeah, I have nothing to complain about this, other than I want more in the series. Please, give me more. I'm kind of sad that I don't have any more to read with Royce and Hadrian. I've already read all the Reria Revelations books, and now I'm caught up with the Reria Chronicles as well. And that's kind of sad. I think there's some short stories that I could read, but I don't think that they have too much Royce and Hadrian together. And anyway, they're short stories, so it's not like that would hold me over for too long. So, oh well. But I'm really glad I read this, and it was really, really good. So before I wrap up my wrap-up, I just want to touch on the goals that I made progress on in February. I'm not going to go into the full details of my goals. I have a video that goes into full detail on all that. But basically, my 3 goals for 2020 were to read 10 novels outside of the fantasy genre, to complete the 2020 r/fantasy bingo, and then to either complete a bunch of series or catch up on a bunch of series. The full list is in the video. Again, I'm not going to go over that. That's what the video is for. So the progress I made in February for the non-fantasy goal, I technically read 2 science fiction, so I guess that counts. They're both novels. I maybe should have made some other stipulations on like not rereads, or maybe not. Maybe I shouldn't. I don't know. I might change this a bit, but so for right now, I'm just gonna say, yep, I read 2 non-fantasy books in February, so that means my total is 2 out of 10 for the goal. The ones that meet the goal are The Giver and The City of Ember. For the r/fantasy bingo, it is not out yet, so I can't update it if it's not out, so that's not applicable. For the series that I wanted to finish goal, I read 3 books that made progress towards this goal. The City of Ember counted as the first book in the City of Ember series, so currently I've read 1 out of 4 books in the series. Bakemonogatari Part 3 also counted for the goal, and it is the 3rd book in the series. This month, I think the 18th volume of the Monogatari series will be coming out, so let's just say that's 3 out of 18. Since it's ongoing, it's a little hard to nail down the exact number, but that's where I'm at right now. And then the last book that counted for this goal was The Giver, which is the first book in the Giver Quartet, so I have read 1 out of 4 of the books for this goal. Anyway, here's all of the books that I read in February, plus a few digital copies, and I can't hold those up because obviously they're digital. But let me know if you've read any of these and your thoughts about them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you again in another video. Bye. Wow.